Welcome to TAP, everyone. Today we're talking about the tarot, and I'm so happy to welcome historian, tarot expert, and author of many books, including the one we'll be speaking about today, An Occult Guide to the Tarot. Welcome, Travis McHenry.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Oh man, I feel it's been a long time since I reached out and since I found your work, and now you have this new amazing book that is truly an in-depth guide, like in the title, a guide to the tarot, and it's also really beautiful. Can I just say that? It's are you also a graphic designer or something?
I do graphic design as well when I'm designing my own tarot decks, but I'll tell you what, I have to give all the credit for the graphics in this book to the team over at Rockpool Publishing. They did an incredible job making it look really slick and attractive. And yeah, they did all the work on this book.
Okay, great, great. Well, credit to them because it is really beautiful, and you want to read through it. So I sent you a list of questions, but I actually found another question to start with because of the title, An Occult Guide to the Tarot. So obvious question: why is it an occult guide? Why is it? What's in that definition?
So the word occult comes from the Latin word occultus, meaning hidden. And that's really all it means. Now, we chose the title An Occult Guide to the Tarot um, because we knew it was going to make people interested in, like, oh, wow, is this something sort of like evil or, kind of satanic or something like that? But that really isn't what it is at all. It is about revealing what is hidden behind sort of the veil of mystery that has been built up around the tarot for the last, whatever it's been, 600, 700 years that the tarot has been in existence.
Okay, so basically you're admitting to taking advantage of us.
Yes, of using a buzzword that we knew people would sort of catch their interest and then get them to come into the text. But I'll tell you what, the my background is in the occult. So that is a series of texts that are hundreds or in some cases thousands of years old that have been used by magicians and alchemists and scholars for many, many years to kind of answer questions about life or about the way the world works um, in a way that would today be considered somewhat non conventional. So, as that is my background, it's how my perspective of the tarot is through that lens of through occult knowledge, occult wisdom.
For sure. Yeah. And you have that deck also called that occult tarot deck, right?
Yeah, yes, they do. Yeah, that was my very first tarot deck, the occult tarot that I created.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's, oh, yeah, a man of so many experiences and so much wisdom. And I'm like, oh, I wish I could know what you know, but let's try if we can get a little bit out of you and know this together with you. Um,
This book is about as close as it gets to like
okay.
seeing inside my brain and understanding, like, how did I learn all this stuff? Where did all this information come from? You're getting like a direct download by reading this book for sure.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. So I actually want to go to the question I think could be a little bit around that because you talk about lifting the veil of commercialism that has obscured the very real and spiritual origins of tarot cards. So what happened, and related to your occult tarot, what has led you to that realization?
So the mystical aspects of the tarot are and have always been somewhat fabricated by publishers and authors to make the tarot seem much more mysterious than it really is. And this trend really started in France in the late 1800s, mid to late 1800s. And it's interesting because Rider Waite, A.E. Waite, Arthur Waite, who created the Rider Waite tarot deck, he actually talks about this in the 1900s. He said, there's a belief that the tarot came from Egypt, and we know now that is absolutely not true. Yet he himself incorporated Egyptian imagery into his tarot deck. So he was okay with, sort of taking advantage of that sort of false perception. And because people are interested in it, he romanticized the tarot in a way many other authors have, including myself. Because when you feel that emotional connection to the cards and you feel like there's an unanswered question in the cards themselves, as you're using them, it helps you push a little further. It helps you push your own like thought process beyond the superficial, beyond just looking at the picture on the card and saying, oh, the 10 of swords must mean death or painful death. How can I push a little bit beyond that? Well, what kinds of death are there? What kinds of pain are there? Is this an emotional pain? Is this going to be the death of my career, like I'm losing my job? The concept, the intention, I should say, is that you will look beyond the surface meaning of the card to understand how it applies in your own life. So the initial intention in the 1800s by publishers and authors of tarot decks, mostly in France during that era, was we're going to make this thing seem a lot older than it really is. And that's going to make people want to buy it because they'll trust it. You trust something that is really old. There are billions of people around the world who believe in holy books simply because they are really old. I will trust a book that is 2,000 years old. I won't necessarily trust a book that was written, 2 months ago.
Mm.
So that was a large part of how that sort of mysticism got built up around the tarot.
You're,
And
sa- you're saying that even the first created deck, they made it so to seem that it was much older, that it was ancient.
absolutely. Now, not the Italian decks.
Okay,
Those I'm talking about, Visconti Tarot, Visconti Strauss Tarot, not those ones, but
okay.
the decks that were used specifically for divination. See, the late 1700s, early 1800s was a turning point in the tarot. That's when it started to be used for divination purposes. And that's when they started cloaking all this mysticism around it to make it seem like it was much more older than it really was.
Interesting. I kind of don't like that, but I would definitely fall into that category that you say that I feel that now that I trust something that's older more. Is that just per definition? I mean, I thought the reason that I trusted something older is that it's much easier today to publish just a very superficial book. you know?
Yeah, that may be true in a lot of cases. I think it's human nature to trust something that we don't necessarily have easy, direct access to. That's why, like, the author of a book, maybe if that author has passed away, you know, years later after their death, their book becomes really popular or renowned for its wisdom in some way. And we'll trust it a little bit more because that person isn't right there for us to access. We can see their faults, we can see their weaknesses. We know they're not, some godlike figure. But once they're dead, oh, maybe they are now. Maybe they're in the spirit world watching over it.
Okay, so human psychology there. Okay, uh, part of the mystery we're talking about here is also the secrecy, right? And you mentioned that. And just I have this question for you around being initiated because it's to do I mean, it's a big deal to be initiated, isn't it?
It is.
You have all of these secret societies, but then actually in your forward to your book, you say that now we are initiated because we're reading it.
Yeah, I have tried to go through and really unveil a lot of the mysteries that even today, I believe, are the Golden Dawn, members of the Golden Dawn, deliberately obscured about not really the tarot itself, but you have to understand the Golden Dawn in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they saw the tarot as a schema into which they could fit their philosophies and their beliefs. And anybody could conceivably use this deck for like self improvement as a tool for self improvement or for enlightenment. And they basically did not tell you the whole schema of their beliefs, though. So, like, for example, the major arcana. Almost everyone knows the major arcana is related to the Hebrew alphabet. But that was created, that idea, that connection was created in the late 1700s by Antoine Coeur de Gebelin, a French author who wrote like sort of the original treatise on divination with the tarot. So he really made that up. And one of his friends as well is Count, who helped him write that chapter in his book. So over the years, other philosophers and other alchemists and occultists added to that and sort of modified the system even further to fit their own philosophical belief system. And the Golden Dawn did that as well. So it's really interesting, though, to know that there are things that the Golden Dawn deliberately did not share with the general public. A.E. Waite left a lot out in his book, and his book, A Pictorial Guide to the Tarot. And if you read that book and you really have a better understanding of the actual Golden Dawn beliefs, you have to think that Waite was deliberately hiding that stuff. He did not want people to have access to the full high level knowledge of the Golden Dawn. And so, yeah, by breaking all that down and just including it on a card by card basis in my book, I do feel like I'm making everyone sort of an initiate in that hidden knowledge.
Yeah, okay, okay. I was wondering about that. Okay. Yeah, because it's only for a select few. I mean, but that's in the past, of course. But there is something to it. I mean, there's a lot to it. You realize that after, when reading your book, there's a lot to this. And like you say, so many people have added their stuff, their beliefs, and their layers into the cards. So, I mean, yeah, and you can use it without knowing all of that, of course. But there's
Right.
a lot to be initiated into if you really want the depth of it, right?
Yeah. And that's the joy of tarot. You can sit down, any layman, any person who just picks up a deck can sit down and use it for divination purposes or some kind of spiritual betterment of themselves. Or you can really take the time, devote a whole life of study to it, and then use it as this great tool for your own spiritual progress.
Did you do that? Did you dedicate your whole life to it? Would you say that? Or would you say you've dedicated your life to occultism or?
I did not intend to dedicate my life to the tarot, but it seems like I have. You
Okay.
know, I picked up my first deck in 1993. And that was when I first became interested in the tarot. And here we are, over 30 years later,
Mm.
which is a lot of my life. And I'm still, learning more about it, finding new ways to use it, and still buying more tarot decks. So yeah, I guess I have in a way.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So, okay, curiosity around the tree of life. Let me see. What am I asking here? Uh, oh yeah. Okay. So it's this quote: by accessing these emanations through meditation and deep study, mortals, that's us, mortals can gain access to the spiritual realms beyond the physical existence, as well as a higher understanding of the universe. So, um, so that maybe that's what we're talking about here. That you could either just pick a card and then you can intuit what's on it, and then you can dedicate your life to it. But then a way to get into the meaning is through that meditation. Is that what you're talking about?
Right. So if you have an understanding of Kabbalah, even the basic sort of fundamental principles of Kabbalistic magic, Kabbalistic philosophy, and how that relates to our daily lives, if you have a basic understanding of that, you can use the tarot to help you navigate through the tree of life, which is this sort of design that starts at the well, some people say it starts at the bottom, some people say it starts at the top at Keter or at Malkuth, and through meditation, through a whole series of exercises, you can move through these through these levels and access sort of divine wisdom or divine spirituality. The whole idea of the tree of life or Kabbalah in general is to have direct access to the divine. In the sense of Judaism, it would be a direct connection to the Abrahamic God or the God of Abraham and to his power. And the Golden Dawn was really big on that. That was what they wanted to do as well. They wanted to use these principles of Kabbalah through ritual, through meditation, through invocation to get to that higher level of access to divine spirituality. And so they incorporated that into the tarot and used Kabbalistic principles in the tarot. And they weren't the first ones to do that, but yeah, it started in France. But so by using the tarot for a higher level spiritual activity than just basic divination, you can use it as a tool to have a higher understanding of those sephira on the tree of life. And then I don't know personally anybody who's ever accessed enlightenment through using tarot, but it could at least help you improve your own spiritual conditions.
Mm. Actually, when you just spoke, I think I just made that little connection around the difference between divination and then what you're talking about here, because I think it was just smashed together for me in one
Right,
category.
right,
Okay, so divination could just be like on a superficial level, just like what's my next husband gonna be sort of questions. But then
yeah.
you are in it for more of a spiritual journey than a what?
That's right. And that's that pushing past the superficial. That's where, the decks that I create, especially try to force you to look past this is just a tool for me to get a leg up in life. Well, this is a tool for you to actually grow as a human being.
Mm. Actually, I took a card just for I asked so so let me see if you can you do a little interpretation here. I took a card
Okay.
for who is Travis McHenry, who is so sometimes I ask the cards about this. I don't know what you think about that kind of question, but like just give me a symbol of who this person is. And I took them so it's that must be in that system would be two of swords.
Okay. I wouldn't see myself as a two of swords kind of guy, but I guess I
Oh,
could be.
I know.
um,
Maybe the questioner is.
the two of swords is about often can be about friendship. It can be about cooperation. I see it sometimes as a card of conflict as well. Actually, in my brand new tarot deck, the Lilith Tarot, which I'm still working on right now, I use it as a card of it could be conflict or it could be friendship. Um, and maybe that describes me in a way. I think I'm more of a Page of Swords kind of guy, or even a King of Swords at this point. But
Yeah, I was like, I got her fell off, so I don't know why that. But the way that I interpreted just intuitively was just, swords is the intellect. So
mhm,
someone, and in, I guess at least in my system, it too is also attraction. So like uh, being someone who's very intelligent and keep attracting and expanding in that mental
right,
field.
right, all right. I'll go with that.
Yeah, right. That's better. But yeah, okay. But maybe like, I'll continue with my list of questions. But I do feel like I want to ask you about that thing about what questions are good questions. You can answer it now if you want to. Like, what questions? Because I sometimes people say you shouldn't ask so like normal trivial questions, man. So, because they have to answer in these images.
Right. A lot of times for me, when I'm doing readings for myself, I will actually just say, hey, what's this next month going to be like? And it's really not you asking the cards, it's you asking yourself. And then as you lay out the cards, you're not necessarily telling your future, but you are creating your future. You're creating sort of a thought map for your brain to say, okay, where am I going to focus on my future for this month? What have I learned and what skills do I have from my past that are going to help me accomplish the goals that I have? And when you lay out the cards, when you first pick your significator, you're thinking ahead of time, what do I want out of this question? What is the answer I want to hear? And how am I going to make that outcome happen? So, in that sense, the tarot is helping you to accomplish that magical goal of um, changing the universe in accordance with your will. So you're literally laying down the bricks that are going to be the foundation of your own action. Hopefully, that's the way people use it on a subconscious level. People don't generally consciously say, "All right, I'm going to do this, this, and this." Um, but there's no other way for it to really function as a fortune telling tool other than compelling you to actually take the action.
Ah, that's really interesting. Yeah, that's the whole. Is it the cards or is it me? And
Right,
my intention is
right.
affecting the whole spread. And uh, okay, let's move on. That's too difficult.
So what I would answer, let me just
Yeah.
circle back to your question real quick. The important thing is not necessarily what you are asking, the question itself, but how you are asking, what your intention is. And is that really coming from your heart, your brain? Uh, is that really what you want as you're asking that question? Are you also speaking sort of your intention, your desire?
Mm. So even in the question, I could maybe be hiding desire somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Interesting, interesting. Okay, so just a little bit more about your book here. So yeah, you actually did mention that thing about that the tarot is not from Egypt, but then there are some meanings of the decans that I maybe expand a little bit about that. What exactly?
There are.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so this is a point of contention where people get really confused. It's very easy to lose track because the terminology, the words, actually mean different things. So a decan originally in ancient Egypt, these were single stars or small groups of stars in the sky that transited the sky throughout the course of a year. And they used these decans to plot out their calendar. Okay, so these were individual stars that were viewed as gods, and these gods brought specific things. They had specific functions over life on Earth. So if we start to think about it that way, it's not all that different from astrology itself, which says, oh well, Venus brings love, or Jupiter brings power, or Pluto brings hidden wealth, or whatever it might be. They assigned those same kinds of meanings to specific stars. So when that star was over the sky, I'll use the star Sirius as an example. The Egyptians called that Sopdet, okay, and it was decan number 36. So the last decan of the year. When it was overhead and in the sky, the Egyptians knew that means the flood is coming. We're gonna get the Nile's gonna flood, and we're gonna have life producing silt spread across the banks. We're going to be able to farm. Everything is going to be fine. So the imperial arrival of Sirius in the sky was a big deal, and it marked the start of the new year in their calendar. So over the course of time, you have Alexander the Great coming in. He invades Persia. He invades Egypt, and he brings with him the Greek philosophers, the Greek academics, and they had their own system of astrology. But then they also are in Babylon, and they're picking up Babylonian astrology. So now you've got these philosophers from different places. You've got Babylonian philosophers, Hellenic, Jewish, and Egyptian, and they're all gathered together in the library of Alexandria, and they're sharing information, and they're realizing, hey, these decanal gods, which guide the path through this night sky, we think they have a lot to do and a lot in common with Babylonian astrology, which was really completely different from Egyptian astrology. But the Greeks came and crammed the two systems together. And that's when the word decan lost its original meaning as a single star in the sky and shifted to mean a section of the zodiac. So, you know, there's 12 zodiac signs throughout the course of a year. The decans are broken into three sections of each of those signs.
That's how I would use it, like 30 degrees each of them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. So that gives us 36 sections again. Originally it was 36 stars, and now it is 36 degrees of the night sky of the zodiac. So you can see the change there is pretty significant. They really are not the same thing anymore, but they're still called by the same term, that term decan. So then many years later, of course, the Golden Dawn magicians say, well, we're going to, and some of the French alchemists, philosophers, occultists said, hey, we're going to fit the tarot, the 36 cards of the minor arcana. That's how many cards there are if you get rid of the aces and the court cards. There's actually 36 cards. We are going to fit these decans into the minor arcana. So the meaning of a particular decan will match the meaning of these minor arcana cards. And that's how we're going to get meaning in those cards. So in a way, it is Egyptian, but it was not originally Egyptian. And honestly, most of those meanings of the original decanal stars have long since been lost. I wrote a book about this. It's called Cult of the Stars. And my Egyptian star oracle tries to revive that system and show you how it would have worked. And it assigns those original Egyptian meanings to each of the cards in the deck, but it really doesn't correspond to the tarot perfectly. It's a rough. You really have to cram it in there to make the original Egyptian definitions fit what a modern tarot card would mean. So that's where the Egyptian mysticism, there is some truth to it, but it's kind of a roundabout truth. It's not really a direct portal to Egyptian knowledge.
Right. I'm being reminded of your beginning of your book where you say that this started because you wanted to know who decided the meaning behind the tarot
Yeah,
cards, right? So, so
yeah,
it's quite a journey, it seems, because a lot of people apparently did.
absolutely. It was like, you know, wanting to figure out where this all started, and I overshot my origin point by a lot, by like 2,000 years. I went all the way back to ancient Egypt. I mean, I actually went to Egypt
Okay.
and like went into the tombs and found the original tomb art that had relevance and meaning to these decans. But then I realized, like, okay, there was a point at which the two systems diverged, and they really aren't the same anymore. And modern most of our modern understanding of the tarot really comes from the late 1700s, and the French authors who were on the tail of the French Revolution and in the thick of the French Revolution. You know, people were desperate. They were scared. Nobles, especially, were really afraid they were going to get their heads chopped off. So they turned to fortune tellers to say, help me. I'm scared. Is my head the next one to be chopped off? And fortune tellers said, well, I think I can make some money at this. So I have an ancient system from Egypt. It was passed to me by a wandering gypsy, and I'm going to help you. So that the nobles trusted that, you know,
Mhm.
because it's something they couldn't quite comprehend. So, they were able then to, okay, we can make money at this, and it's helping people. It's not like they were taking advantage of them. You know, if you did a reading for somebody, and I still believe this today, if you do a tarot reading for someone and they disconnect that call feeling better than they did when they started that reading, there's nothing wrong with that. You
No,
know,
that's good.
that
Okay. It's
that's the same
helpful.
as, yeah, exactly the same as going to a minister, or a priest, or some, you know, spiritual figure, and sitting down and saying, hey, I'm really worried about this situation. What guidance can you give me? And you give them guidance. And that's the way I think most tarot readers are. They are trying to genuinely help people. They're not trying to take advantage of people. um, I mean, but if somebody who's like worth hundreds of millions of dollars comes to you, well, I'm gonna have to charge you a little bit more. It's a sliding scale. Again,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with that. They can afford it.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to blame them, and it's if it's hard to make money on spiritual
Right,
service.
right.
Yeah. Okay. So this is an important question. Was tarot really created to empower women? Because you have a quote around that. I don't know if I should quote you or just ask you. What do you prefer?
Okay, so the very early Visconta Stravsa tarot decks, which were developed in Italy, they have extra court cards in the minor arcana. They have female characters, female figures, besides just the queen. So they had a damsel, also known as a princess. They had a lady knight, which would have been called a lady on horse, but it was essentially a female knight. And you have to wonder, like, why did they add these extra female characters into the minor arcana when we don't have them in the modern versions? And the reality was, in the 1400s in Italy, women were playing a lot of cards. The women nobles for whom these decks were created were included in the group of people who use playing cards, and the women were shown in positions really of power in these decks.
So they had role models all of the sudden in the
That's exactly it.
thing.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. It was giving them a role model, something to look up to, someone to sort of say, well, I can feel that little bit of pride in myself, um, which I think is kind of a cool thing. And obviously later, those cards were stripped away and removed. I've tried to add them back into some of my successive decks to put in female court cards, more female court cards in the minor arcana.
Okay, so but it was intended. It was intended to empower women. Was that? What about the culture? Wasn't it dangerous
It,
now?
it was a male dominated culture for sure. And here's the thing, you have to understand, like in the 1400s, women were so low on the social totem pole. They had no real authority or power or anything. There was no danger. There was not going to be a female uprising or women marching in the streets or anything like that because they were included in these tarot decks. And
Okay.
and it wasn't like the entire tarot was created to empower women. I'm not suggesting that at all, but just the fact that it does include strong female characters. And remember, Catholics, especially Italian Catholics back in the 1400s, they revere a lot of female figures. Mary Magdalene, for example, the Virgin Mary was considered on par with any of the other saints or religious figures that might have existed in Catholicism. So yeah, it was okay for them to uphold the ideals of powerful women.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like how much you left around it not being possible for, for women to find power, but I get it. It's that was the context. Yeah. Okay. So, uh, I'd love. So we have just a little segment left here. Solo Busco Tarot. Is that how you?
Yeah, so the Sola Busca, yeah.
Sola Busca Tarot. Why has it remained such a mystery for so long? And what about this Count Leopoldo? Uh,
Is I
is he
can't
the-
pronounce that either.
oh,
It's Italian.
that's why I
Okay,
wanted to
so
quote you earlier. That was also because of some Italian words there.
So the Sola Busca Tarot is a really interesting deck that I had never really looked into much before
Okay.
until I started writing this book. The reason it's so interesting is because the author is unknown. The symbology of it is really kind of mysterious. Like whoever created this deck seemed to have an understanding of alchemy. And because we don't know who the author is, it's very difficult to date it. And there, the original scholar, Count Leopold Kissenagor, whatever his name was, we'll still call him Count Leopold. Okay.
Yeah.
So he was really the first person to describe this deck in the early 1800s. So I think it was about 1815 or 1810, somewhere around there. He wrote a book about engravings in Italy, Italian engravings, and this deck was included in that book. So he believed the deck was from the 1400s. Now, and it was contemporary with like the Visconti Strozza Tarot. Now that's really important because this deck has a fully illustrated minor arcana. It is the first deck that we know of that has got a fully illustrated minor arcana. And it's even more interesting to modern tarot users because a copy of that deck was made available to the British Museum in 1909 or 1908. And Pamela Coleman Smith was able to go look at those engravings and use them to influence her own minor arcana for the Rider Waite Smith tarot deck.
Mm.
So this deck is really important as a tarot artifact and to look at the history of the tarot. However, Count Leopoldo was a functionary of the Napoleonic government. So he was a diehard admirer and lover of Napoleon, Emperor Napoleon of the French. This deck, the Sola Busca Tarot, was specifically created to mock, insult, and generally disparage Emperor Napoleon because it was made in the Republic of Venice when right after Napoleon came through and shattered the Republic of Venice. He actually deposed the Doge and turned it into like his own private country, his own private state as part of the French Empire. So whoever made this deck made it specifically to insult and berate and call out Napoleon's trampling of democratic ideals.
It was
So
like a countercultural move.
exactly, almost like, or even like a parody, like an episode of Saturday Night Live or South Park or something like that. So now imagine that like a hardcore, we'll say Trump supporter or MAGA supporter were to see like an episode of South Park that is insulting Donald Trump. This guy, Count Leopoldo, tried to find any way to make this not about Napoleon. And the other thing was the creator of the deck would have been afraid, like they practiced state censorship. If you insulted, the imperial crown of Napoleon, you were going to jail. It was a really big deal.
Yeah.
He practiced censorship of the press. You would have been arrested, all your stuff burned, your estate seized. So the creator of the deck or the owner of the deck had a vested interest in pretending like this deck was older than it was and that it was not created to defame and mock Napoleon Bonaparte.
Mm.
So basically, that started the legend that this deck came from the 1400s, which it didn't, and that it is really cloaked in mystery when it isn't. If you can look at it and understand, this deck celebrates the Roman Republic and demonizes imperial ambitions, specifically the imperial ambitions of Napoleon. There's Napoleonic characters throughout the deck. If you look at it and you have that in your mind, just think about what Napoleon looks like. There's like, I don't know, 8 or 9 characters, like a guy with his pants falling down, and that's clearly Napoleon. Or the Doge of Italy as well. If you look at what the picture of the last Doge of the Venetian Republic looked like, and look at the guy in the deck, they look identical. So yeah. So in the modern era now you would think we figured this out, right? No, because the last owner of the deck was this Italian, sort of formerly noble family. They had a vested interest in saying, no, this thing is 450 years old. Don't you want to? And they sold it to a museum for millions of dollars. So they had a vested interest in making this thing seem much older than it was. It's rare, it's old, but it's from the it's from the late 1700s to the early 1800s. That's when the deck was actually designed. I think they started it in the late 1700s, and then after Napoleon's invasion of northern Italy, they went through and changed some of the cards, added some additional cards, and gave it its more specific theme of anti-Napoleonism.
Isn't it amazing? A deck of cards can be used in so diverse ways.
Yeah, yeah.
It reminds me of this quote from you, this I dare to quote. The pairing of art, games, and spiritual enlightenment is in some ways a symbol of the birth of the Renaissance in Italy, when science, art, and the mathematics began to flourish. New ideas and inventions spread out of Italy and across Europe, influencing a broad cultural explosion of innovation and discovery. So, they were a centerpiece of the Renaissance.
Absolutely, they were. And people don't really understand today how revolutionary playing cards were in the late 1300s, early 1400s. They swept through, they came from the Mamluk Empire in Egypt, and these cards, just basic playing cards, swept through Europe. It was like video games in the 1980s. Everybody had to have a Nintendo and a Super Nintendo, and that was exactly the way playing cards were in the late 1300s. Everybody wanted these things. Everybody was addicted to playing them. And so the Italian nobles, because the Catholic Church had basically condemned the playing cards, they said you can't gamble, you can't do playing cards, it's a vice. The Italian nobles had to figure out a way that they could still have their fun playing games and make this approved by the Catholic Church. So that was how the tarot was really invented, was by combining these beautiful paintings, these beautiful pictures, which would provide a moral lesson. You've got death, you've got the Hierophant, which was originally the Pope, the resurrection, the world, all these cards, the devil, cards that are trying to give you a moral message. As you're playing the game, you're seeing these moral messages and hopefully feeling some aspect of spirituality while also having a good time playing this addictive playing card game. And that made it okay in the eyes of the church. So so yeah, it's a perfect, the tarot itself is a perfect cross section of Renaissance ideals. I really do believe that.
Mm. I can't help to think about if there was moral installed in video games. I mean, if you've
Yeah.
played it with
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in a way there is, like, you're the hero, let's say you're Mario, and you're
right,
going through obstacles and challenges, and you're trying to rescue someone
right.
at your own peril. You're willing to sacrifice yourself to try to get and rescue this person who is helpless and can't help themselves. So yeah, in a way that does
Yeah.
exist. It's just not as implicit as it
Right.
is, I think, in the
Okay.
tarot.
But then going from a game to divination, that's a big thing.
It's a humongous shift, and that's when the tarot started to be demonized um, by a lot of religious authorities. Not because of the tarot cards themselves, but because divination is generally a prohibited activity by most Christian churches, especially. So, yeah, that shift, as I said before, happened during the French Revolution, right before and during the French Revolution. Um, and then it just took hold as a tool for divination, just like any other tool, the pendulum or runes or anything like
Mm. Okay, I have so many questions for you, and I have so little time left. It's just one fun question that just came here. I want to ask you that a lot of people who don't know the differences between cards, they will just call everything tarot cards. Have you noticed
Yeah,
that?
that
Funny.
I have, yeah. And also, a lot of people think there's just one deck of tarot cards. They don't understand there's like thousands of different designs and themes and authors. Yeah,
Yeah, isn't it funny? Just yeah, like
yes,
you could use yeah angel cards or whatever that's not based on this original
the
template.
tarot system,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I wanted to just say a little bit about your birth chart, Travis. How about that?
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
What I do here is just I pick one signature out because otherwise it's too much.
Right.
So it's just one signature. Uh, we know this already. That's how it works, right? It's just a symbol of we already know that you are, but it is the symbol of being a specialist. Do you know your birth chart?
I do. I think I sent it to you already.
Yeah, you
It's
did. You
yeah.
did. I have it right here. Uh,
Oh, do I know it? Yeah,
yeah, if you know.
I've read over it a few times. I try to use it for compatibility when I start dating someone new, is honestly how I get sort of the most out of it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah, but that's perfect. So we can see how is the match and everything.
Right.
So this I'm talking specifically about Saturn in Virgo, but there's
Okay.
two other planets there in Virgo. So a highly specialized expert, someone who can really be very thorough and do the hard work so that it becomes reliable. Virgo is after Leo, where it's just more fun and it's more like a hobby. And then Virgo is this is the real work, really wanting to sort through it. And then you are a Gemini, so communicating that. What the number book is it that you've published now?
I keep losing track. People
Okay,
ask me. It's a lot. I've published, I
I was like
think,
counting on the
four,
website.
yeah, it's like 14 tarot decks and I don't know, 12 or 13 books. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, so that's really the blessing of having Gemini as well, because otherwise you might hold it back. The retention,
Right.
keep being too careful. But Gemini, you got to get it out there. So,
Yeah.
so, so yeah, it works really well with you being a specialist. That's kind of what I wanted to say. How does that sound?
It sounds very good. It was actually, I was in the Navy for 8 years, and that my ability to specialize and completely focus on one thing was like my strength. It's why I was so good at my job. I did anti-terrorism analysis,
Mm.
and I would find like an indication that something had happened, and I could dig into that until I got like the license plate number of the truck that was seen outside that base. Okay, who owns the license plate, and then go down that person's whole life and figure out, well, oh wait, their third cousin is Osama bin Laden. Okay, so maybe there is a connection. That was the level of obsession that I had with detail and getting to the bottom to answer the question.
Oh, I love that. I really love that. It is such a
Um,
good use of it, man. It is such a good use. Yeah, it really is. So yeah, because being thorough, and I think the rest of your chart basically helps you to not become too much of a perfectionist, because if it was only that, it would just be stuck there. But you have so much
right.
else in your chart that helps you loosen up about it. For example, Gemini.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I alternate. I often consider myself a true Gemini because I alternate between being like extremely anxious and stressed out and completely carefree and not worrying at all about things. I have both of those in my personality.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Let them be in dialogue. Get to
Yeah,
know.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then I wanted to just your quote here that I really loved, that you said you resolved to unearth as much hidden information as I possibly could in the pursuit of truly understanding what sets tarot cards apart from other forms of divination. So, what does set tarot cards apart from other forms of divination?
Well, this is the reason that I started creating my own tarot decks, is because I wanted to really understand who decided what each of these cards mean,
Yeah,
where the artwork come from,
yeah,
and you know what's really the facts behind everything, the real hard stuff that I can look at and feel in my hand. And as I dove down that rabbit hole, the more I learned, the more I came to trust the tarot as a tool for divination and spiritual growth. And I, it's definitely unique among other forms of divination. For example, a pendulum requires gravity to work. So it's interacting directly with the Earth's like own gravitational field. That's a force. That's a real force that exists. And so a lot of people can trust a pendulum to give them a correct answer, but that can help you make a decision, but is it any better than flipping a coin? Because a coin also relies on gravity to go up and turn around and fall back down. And it's only going to go one of two ways, really. And this pendulum is somewhat similar. Runes are, have a real specific tradition in the Nordic countries. And but is a rune any different from, for example, rolling a dice? Runes have the letters, and a dice has numbers on it. So in a way, they're very similar. Tarot cards combine so many different traditions in one tool that it becomes difficult to say, okay, well, none of those are accurate. Some element of accuracy, whether it's the Kabbalah aspect, the Hebrew alphabet, the numerology, the astrology, and then the artwork itself is all in there. And there's an element of psychology as well. It's all in the tarot. And so for me, that's what makes it such a useful tool. And it's why I have sort of devoted my life in a way to the pursuit of tarot.
Because you want it all.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
It's oh man. So Travis, is there anything you wanna end it by saying? Anything else you can enlighten for us? I mean, you've been very generous up until now, but just any kind of finale here.
I guess I would, what I tell everybody who is interested in tarot and maybe has never really used it before is to, just kind of relax. What do the cards mean to you is almost more important than what the author or I or anybody else thinks about what the cards mean. Because in every circumstance, the conditions under which you're doing that reading are going to give you context to the meaning for you personally. So if you just sort of relax, lay out the cards and think, okay, what was the question I asked? How do these things relate to that in context? You're going to get a lot more out of the tarot than you would necessarily studying line by line. All right, this card means exactly that. Like there's a benefit to doing that, but in the end, you got to let some of that go and just kind of flow with the cards themselves.
Yeah, okay. So flow with the cards themselves. Is it do you think can we connect to spirits this way?
I get this question a lot. So I made two tarot decks that are specifically designed to connect with spirits.
Okay.
The occult tarot is designed to help you connect with demons, and the angel tarot helps you connect with angels. Um, Outside of decks that are specifically made for that purpose, I don't really know if you could connect personally with spirits. Maybe I haven't really had that experience myself, unless it's with those specific decks.
And the reason why you would want to connect with a demon is because you don't see a demon as a evil spirit.
As something evil, yeah. It's actually, if we go back to those decanal gods that I was telling you about before, the individual star gods in the sky.
Mhm.
So I said there were 36, there were actually 72. The Egyptians only used 36 of them in a given year. They understood that there's the precession of the equinoxes. They understood a lot more about astrophysics than most people would care to admit or really acknowledge. So they actually had 72 of these different stars that they revered and used to sort of track their positions in the night sky. And those 72 stars became eventually, through the lens of Christianity and earlier Greco-Roman paganism, they eventually became the angels and the demons. 72 angels and 72 demons of the Kabbalah and of the Goetia. And that's why they have an astrology. If you look at all the texts relating to the angels and the demons, they all have certain days of the year or times that they rule over. Well, how would that be possible have that kind of schematic unless we could chart their movements through the sky. And that's what the Egyptians did. They charted the actual movements through the sky. They knew exactly where every star was at any given moment, even when they were under the horizon, below the horizon, in a place called the Duat, which is sort of like the Egyptian conception of the underworld. So even when they were down there, they were still exerting some kind of an influence over us, just the way the angels do all the time throughout the course of the year. So yeah, I really believe that the goetic demons and the Kabbalistic angels are actually just different parts of the same entity in the night sky or the day sky.
They made stars into demons, is what you said.
Absolutely, yeah. And actually, the original Greek word for these specific stellar gods were daimon, Daimon,
I've heard that.
and that's the same word that the Greeks used to describe the kind of demons that possess people in the original Old Testament, in the books of the Bible.
But
Yeah,
the reason why I ask is because you've kept the word demon. So you don't say diamond, but you say demon.
because that's the vernacular that people understand.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you imply no evil by it.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, and I believe there are different kinds of demons. There are these sort of stellar gods that are moving through the night sky. That's one kind of a demon. And then there are these earthbound spirits that are implicitly evil. That's really the kind of thing that people are afraid of, are the earthbound spirits.
Yeah, earthbound spirits. Oh man. Okay. Okay. Travis McHenry, I just wanted every single minute out of you. So, oh man, thank you so much. I mean, you're such an inspiration, and I'll of course link to your work. And you have a few YouTube videos. It's not a lot, right? But you have some.
Yeah, I've put together quite a few. I'm
Okay.
always trying to do more. Yeah, people always want more tarot videos, and it's tough to keep making them. But yeah, I've got a few out there.
Okay. Sorry about that. Indicating it's not enough. Anyway, thank you so much for being on tap.
Thank you for having me.